So this is going to be lesson 4 in our solving equations unit. It's going to be on distribution. The homework is going to be pages 8 through 9. So I have a warm-up. It's 3 questions. It's going to be about combining like terms. So if you want to hit pause and solve these real quick. So if we start out with the first one, we look at our 3f minus 8 minus 5f equals 2. If we were to combine these, we see that we have 3f and a negative 5f. Always remember that sign in front. If I was to combine those, I would get negative 2f minus 8 equals 2. And then I can just add 8 both sides. I'll get negative 2f equals 10. Divide by negative 2 on both sides. And I'll get f equals negative 5 for my first one. If I look at my second one, split this. I have negative 2x plus 7x. So I can have 5x plus 4 equals 19. Subtract 4 from both sides. I get 5x equals 15. Divide by 5 on both sides, and you're left with x equals 3. And then for our last one, this one's a little bit longer, but we're all capable of doing it. Split that up. I have negative 10z and 6z, but then I also have a 2 and a negative 4. So if I was to combine these two terms first, I would be left with negative 4z, and then if I did 2 minus 4, I would have negative 2 equals 14. I can add 2 to both sides. I'll get negative 4z equals 16. Divide by negative 4 on both sides. And I'm left with z equals negative 4. Okay? Now, for our lesson, if you open up your packet to page 9, it says distribution in equations. Solve the equations, but use the distribution or distributive property first. So, nothing new. We've done this before. We're just looking at the equations now. For my first example, I have 12 times the quantity x plus 5 equals 144. I want to distribute my 12 inside my parentheses. So I can do 12 times x is 12x, and 12 times 5 will give me 60 equals 144. I can subtract 60 from both sides, giving me 12x equals 84. Divide that by 12 on both sides, and I'm left with x equals 7. For my next one, same thing. I want to take my 10 and distribute it inside my parentheses. I do 10 times k is 10k. I do 10 times negative 9. Watch the sign. I get minus 90 equals negative 10. I can add 90 to both sides. I'm left with 10k on this side equals negative 10 plus 90 is going to give me positive 80. I divide by 10 on both sides. I get k equals 8. If I look at my next example, example 3, I have negative 2 equals 2 times the quantity 2n plus 5. I'm going to split it up. I'm going to take my 2, distribute it inside. On this side, I'll have negative 2 equals 2 times 2n gives me 4n. 2 times 5 will give me plus 10. I can subtract 10 from both sides. I have negative 12 equals 4n. Divide by 4. And I'm left with negative 3 equals n. Now, we have a few more examples just to practice that. But I want to flip to the next page and look at example 8 because it has some decimals in it. we're still going to do the same thing. We'll still take our 5 and distribute it in. If I do 5 times 2.9, you should get 14.5. Then I have 5 times k will give me 5k equals 8.2. I split it up. I can subtract 14.5 from both sides. I'll have 5x equals 8.2 minus 14.5 will give me negative 6.3. I divide by 5 on both sides, and I'll get x equals negative 1.26. Now, one more example. Example 9, a little word problem. It says your class hopes to collect 1,200 bottles of recycle to raise money for a class trip. During the first week, the 24 students in your class each collect 34 bottles. How many more bottles per student should the class collect? We're doing a word problem. We always have to define a variable. So in this case, I'm going to say, let B equal bottles, right? Because we're talking about how many more bottles per student that they need to collect. So, for this one, we know we're going to have something equal up to 1,200, right? So, on our one side of our equation, it tells us that we have 24 students in our class that each collect 34 water bottles. But we want to know how much more per student the class should collect. So, I'm going to write 24. And I'm going to give you a hint. We're talking about distribution, right? So, I'm going to put parentheses here. I have 24 students that I'm going to distribute in. I'm going to multiply it by something, right? So, I have 24. I'm going to do 24 times the quantity 34 plus B equals 1,200. Because I have 24 students, and if I was to multiply it by 34, how many bottles they each brought in, and then multiply that by B, 24 times how many more bottles, I can then solve to figure out how many bottles per student needs to be collected. So, if I do 24 times 34, I get 816 plus 24 times B is 24B equals 1,200. I can subtract 816 from both sides. I get 24B equals 384. I'm going to move this over here because of our little picture. I'm just going to rewrite it. 24B equals 384. Now I'm going to solve for B. So I'm going to divide by 24 on each side, and I'll get left with B equals 16. Up here at the top, we said B was going to equal the number of bottles, right? So we got B equals 16. So we know that each student would have to collect 16 more bottles for them to reach their goal of 1,200.